Hello, welcome to Revenant Reads. I'm Vin, and this is another edition of Fresh Red Kills. So on Fresh Red Kills, I talk about my recent reads. What have I finished recently, and what am I currently reading? It's been about 2 weeks, I think, since my last Fresh Red Kills. I'm a teacher, and a lot of schools are either out or getting out this week. I've still got another week and a half, so things have still been very busy around here. Last weekend, my daughter turned 5, so we had a nice big party for her. This past weekend, I had a wedding, and just a lot of events, a lot of things going on. So I'm finally getting a video in. So in that time, since my last video, I did finish reading William Peter Blatty's Legion. Published in 1983. This was his follow-up sequel to The Exorcist. I am a big fan of The Exorcist film by William Friedkin, and I also really did like the novel. I thought that Blatty did a great job with that novel. One of the things I liked most and appreciated most about that novel was the attention to the characters. The characters felt fleshed out. They felt three-dimensional. It didn't feel like Blatty was forcing certain, how can I say, beliefs onto a character naturally. It sounds kind of weird what I'm saying, but it relates to how I feel about this book. This was the last book that I was reading for Maybe Midrash, which in the month of May, choosing books, nonfiction or fiction. I think one of each, but I did more. That dealt with religion and discussed them in a serious way. So I appreciated The Exorcist, especially with how it approached ideas of faith and allowing characters to kind of organically find their way through questions about faith and religion and God and Satan. I don't get that feeling from this one. Blatty did direct a film version of this, The Exorcist 3, and that movie has some issues. The studio did force him to put an exorcism at the end of that movie, and it definitely feels shoehorned in. But ultimately, I do think that movie is an improvement on this. There are certain things that you can show visually that you can't, necessarily pull off in writing, it seems. So my first issue with this is the first half, really. This deals with Detective Kinderman, who was the detective in The Exorcist. And the first half, there are repeated digressions of Kinderman pondering creation and proofs of God. And this is like really a year before intelligent design was coined. I think that's officially 1984. But you start seeing already certain arguments that would appear in intelligent design in here. So we're going through this murder investigation with Detective Kinderman, thinking that a serial killer who had supposed to have died years ago, the Gemini killer, seems to be back, or else somebody is using his MO to kill people. So we kind of do a little bit of investigating, and then all of a sudden Kinderman will go on these long rants about the human eye and evolution, and it's difficult to see exactly where they connect. And he's supposedly trying to solve the problem of evil, which he never really gets through. And in those moments, I don't feel like I'm listening to the character of Kinderman, who in The Exorcist was much more of a schmoozer. You can almost get the sense that he would kind of play a little bit bumbling, a little bit bashful here and there, a little bit aw shucks, in order to get information out of people. And that's not really, it doesn't feel like the same character in this. So instead, yeah, he continually is going on. And, he's a homicide detective, so he's busy. And I don't know how he's reading all of these scientific studies that he's allow him to ponder proofs of God. Now, of course, if he was reading a book about proofs of God, I would understand that. That's not how it's taken here. It seems like he's just finding all this stuff independently in whatever free time he apparently has. I don't know. In the second half of the book, it does pick up. We get away from some of these religious diatribes, and we do finally see who is quite possibly the Gemini Killer. And there's some pretty good scenes. It really makes me appreciate Brad Dourif's performance in The Exorcist 3. He pulls that off beautifully, some of the dialogue. And it really kind of helps to come alive at that point. But it does kind of end with a whimper in the end. I do prefer the film version of this story over the book. It was okay, especially in the second half, but not one that I could highly recommend. So those are my thoughts on Legion. After that, I read... Put that one down. The Last Day, Wrath, Ruin, and Reason in the Great Lisbon Earthquake of 1755 by Nicholas Shrady. Nicholas Shrady, I believe, was born and raised here in Connecticut and now resides in Spain. And this is a work of popular history. And the reason I chose this is because I'm taking part in the Reading Euro 2020 or 2021. I don't remember exactly what year we're putting on there. Organized by Mark over at Book Time with Elvis, where we're looking at the European Soccer Championship that's going on right now. And he assigned each participant a country to follow. And we read a book or something from that country or having to do with that country. And we follow that country through the tournament. And if our country wins or ties against another team, we don't have to read anything else until the next match. But if our country loses to a country, we have to read something from that other country. And I got Portugal. And I wasn't sure what I was going to read for that, but then I came across this book, and it sounded really right up my alley. I had been interested in the Portuguese Inquisition, and this deals with that, actually, but it also deals with the Enlightenment, which is something that I have a great interest in. So what Nicholas Shrady is doing here, again, it's a work of popular history. It doesn't go into great details, but it's very readable. He moves the narrative along. He opens up really in the first part with the earthquake, with the devastation that topples Lisbon, and then a tsunami comes, washes out hundreds of people, the fires that devastate. And he really is painting a picture of a country kind of going kicking and screaming into the Enlightenment. There is a clear hero in this book, and it does deal with Carvalho, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, who basically rules things in the name of the king. But the real hero is Enlightenment in this. It is very much a victory over religion tale. Not an entire victory at all, but each battle won against religion is celebrated in here. He paints a picture of Lisbon in the throes of the Inquisition, Jews being burned at the stake in courtyards, the Jesuits having an iron grip on the city. And after everything is destroyed, you have this guy Carvalho come in, because the king of Portugal at that time doesn't seem to be able to get his act together. He's not very well equipped to handle this. So Carvalho takes over, and he sort of makes a war against the Jesuits, and brings in some Enlightenment principles, not just in the rebuilding of Lisbon, which reflects some of that Enlightenment principle, but also with more education, abolishing slavery within Portugal, not necessarily in the colonies, in Brazil, but helping to bring actually a little more racial tolerance as well. So bringing Lisbon and Portugal into the modern era, more in step with the rest of Europe at the time. And it is not a total victory. It doesn't last forever. It does seem like there's a backslide. But I did enjoy this read. It was a nice quick read. He does kind of in the middle go through a lengthy digression into Portuguese history, talking about the Second Crusade and 16th century Inquisition and everything else. And it was difficult to see exactly how much of that stuff I needed to know in order to understand what happened in 1755 and after, and of course immediately before. It's kind of like if I was going to read a book on the effects of 9/11, and there was a lengthy passage about New Amsterdam and Peter Stuyvesant. I found this stuff interesting because I didn't know about it, but I don't know if it was necessary to the book. However, he does come back and give us a really nice rendition of Portugal at this time. So yeah, if that sounds interesting to people, this is one that I would recommend. Again, it is a popular history. There, you know, you don't have any extensive notes, really. The notes are only a few pages with a bibliography. But yeah, very enjoyable. I also picked up, because I'm participating in the Reading Euro Challenge, picked this up. Rutgers University Press was having a spring sale. They had a whole bunch of selection of books that were like $5 or $6, certainly cheaper than what their normal prices are. And I picked up a few things dealing with horror studies, but I also saw this and I picked this up. So this is Soccer by Jean-Philippe Toussaint. I'm not entirely sure if I'm saying that right, but he is a Belgian novelist, I think he's a filmmaker as well, but I was not familiar with his work. And this is a thin little book, and I am a soccer fan. I do like soccer. One of those, uncommon Americans. If you're a soccer fan in the United States and you openly admit that you are, you will inevitably have other Americans who have to go out of their way to tell you all the reasons that they don't like soccer. That's just kind of a part of what it is to be a soccer fan in this country. And this is kind of like part memoir, part travelogue, part, they say, philosophical essay. I'm not so sure if I go that far. He kind of focuses on different parts of his life as they coincide with some of the World Cups, beginning the late 90s and going into the mid 2010s. And he does have some nice insights. He talks about, to watch soccer is to kind of just be sucked into the moment. You're not really thinking about anything else. He kind of relates to basically like, sex is one of the only other times when you have this laser focus and the rest of the world seems to disappear. And I can see that, people who don't like soccer, they tend to find it boring and there's enough scoring going on. But it is also known as the beautiful game. And one of the things I like is to look at that field and you see the way that the players start moving and you can start to see that perfect storm happen with, that results in a goal. And it's kind of a sport where it's like blinking, you might miss it. Yes, there can be long stretches where there's not scoring happening, but it always seems like anything could happen at that moment. So I related to that sort of insight. I was glad to kind of, it made me start thinking about that at least. But ultimately, I can't say that I entirely enjoyed this. I mean, he does say in the beginning that this is going to be too intellectual for soccer fans. And the other intellectuals aren't going to care about soccer. So he even admits, he's like, I'm not sure exactly who this book is for. And I kind of agree with that, but not exactly for the same reasons. I am a soccer fan and I do like intellectual stuff, but this does come off as very meandering sometimes. There's whole points where he likes to remind you of all the different places that he's been to, which, it's, I like to travel too, but I don't want to remind everybody of every place that I've been. And, instead of talking about one World Cup, he talks about going to see a race car driver at night and the car doesn't work. It doesn't tell you much about soccer. I don't find out too much about him or philosophy or anything. This is a philosophical essay. So yeah, I don't know what to think about this. For the people who've read this author, does that sound like other things that he's written? There's definitely, I don't know if it's the translation or if it's him, but they're very incredibly long sentences with lots and lots of commas. So it's not a concisely written thing. But anyway, I don't think I'd really recommend this, but that's the other thing that I finished. What I have started reading, just talk about these very briefly. I did start reading The Civil War by Bruce Catton, originally published, this is American Heritage, single volume history of the Civil War, originally published in 1960. I do have plans to go to Gettysburg next month, so I'm just kind of refreshing myself on Civil War history, and I think I'm going to read a couple other things on Gettysburg as well. So I'm enjoying it so far. You can definitely see that this, though, is pre-civil rights era. Yes, it was 1960s, kind of in the middle of civil rights, but at least in the introduction, the abolitionists don't really get the respect that they deserve. I think that William Lord Garrison is described as fanatical, and Charles Sumner, who was beaten on the Senate floor, as self-righteous, and you don't get those sorts of adjectives for the South. So I do think he is attempting a balanced point of view, but you could still see a little bit of that lost cause remnant in there. But anyway, I am enjoying this. It's very well written, and plenty of images as well to help along. So I hope to finish that one this week. And I also did start reading William Castle. Step Right Up, I'm going to scare the pants off America. Memoirs of a B-movie mogul. William Castle is the one who gave us, in the late 1950s and throughout the 1960s, these gimmicky type films. House on Haunted Hill, The Tingler, and they're fun. I just think these are incredibly fun. And this is his, really, it's like a self-published memoir. The publisher is William Castle Productions. And just like any kind of self-published thing, there are a lot of typographical errors. Sentences that just kind of all of a sudden go down to the next line for no reason. Missing quotation marks, missing punctuation in other ways. However, I'm a couple chapters in so far, and he can tell a good story. Every chapter is a great yarn. Because it's William Castle, I don't know how much of it I should believe, but I am actually having a lot of fun going through the story of his life so far. So I look forward to finishing this one up as well. And yes, that is it. That is what I have read. I guess that's it. All right, if you've read any of these, I'd love to hear your thoughts. All right, thank you, BookTube.